So again, welcome everyone. Today we want to share a bit about qualitative data analysis. This is a very important area, especially for people who do statistics, given that a good number of them don't really understand it, rather don't go through it. It is of passion to me because I've seen a lot of reports where people share reports where it is just full of tables and no explanations, which really makes sometimes the reports look a bit not so nice. But before I continue, I want to get feedback from one of you. Kindly, if you can hear me, please tell me so that I know I'm not talking alone.
We can hear you.
Great.
I'm finding Amir.
Thanks. I hope you can still hear me. So let me continue. So first,
Yes.
the question is, why do this qualitative area? I need to put it out clearly that most of the people who are in this session right now, from the way I understand, are people who are training a lot more in quantitative analysis, in either statistics and economics, math, and something like that. And when we come to quantitative analysis, we focus on numbers. And apart from that, people can decide to go a lot more abstract and look at theorems and proofs and things like that. And then when people go out to the real world, it dawns on them that a lot of the questions there are not just what is happening, but also why is it happening? And this calls for people to understand why we need to really look into also the qualitative data and think of methods of analyzing it. This kind of analysis helps people to really get a better understanding of the figures they have in their analysis. Rather, it helps us to understand why is there this behavior, and rather than just what has happened. I do believe that for us to be effective researchers, we really need to have a good blend of both qualitative and quantitative analysis. I've looked at I've actually referenced three main resources. The first one is Pell Institute, an evaluation toolkit from their website. And the second one is the website Question Pro. And I want to mention my biggest motivation for doing this talk was a session I attended by AIDA Africa training. It is on YouTube. I can avail these slides for anybody who wants so that they can get the links. Now, from Pell Institute, it shows that when we talk of qualitative data analysis, for this case, I'll be calling it QDA just to make it easier. This is where we really want to identify, examine, interpret patterns and themes in text data. I like the why they've put the word text and also the idea of themes, because that is a very key thing when it comes to understanding it. Now, one other thing they mentioned is the fact that these themes or these texts might even evolve as the study continues, which is a bit different from when we talk of quantitative data analysis. Now, because it is not 100% certain in its way, it almost approximates and sort of helps somebody to characterize. In this session tonight, I want us to really look at how can we really organize for it, how can we conduct it, and how can we analyze qualitative data. Again, my biggest motivation was in Africa. So first, we need to understand what the type of data it is that we are qualitative, and I need to make it clear that in my context, whenever I say qualitative, I really mean text data. I understand when we get to the university and we're studying a lot more scientific courses, or particularly statistics and maths, we'll be told qualitative data to mean categorical data, which can be either ordinal, which has some ordering in it, like good, better, best, or nominal, in which all the categories have equal importance. For example, gender, male, female. Also, it is agreed that every text data is qualitative. When we come to the computing world, the categorical data is almost considered quantitative because it can be used and it can be analyzed using bar graphs. And also, apart from just that, there are methods which have been designed to analyze categorical data. So for this session, again, when I talk of qualitative, my biggest focus is text data and audio data and visual data where it's necessary. So one thing we need to do is to collect the data. And I want to first start with how the methods that we use when we're collecting quantitative data, because it is structured in a different way. For example, in quantitative, first we really need to understand the target population, and then we need to think, do we want to use a census or a sample? In most cases, we might want to use the sample. Now, with quantitative data, there is a big reason that people want to generalize to the population. And in order to generalize, people want the sample that has been selected to be as representative to the population as possible. And therefore, we use what we call probabilistic sampling. It's probabilistic sampling. And some of them, which you know, include simple random sampling, stratified sampling, and of course, several of them. In simple random sampling, everybody in the population has an equal chance of being selected. And before we even go and collect the data, in quantitative analysis, we've defined methods of deciding what is the sample size, like that one common formula that I've put there. And when we go out, we have predefined questions for which we want responses, and most of those responses can be analyzed using numerical methods. Now, this is not so with qualitative. Yes, target population is identified also in qualitative. However, because of so many limitations and the nature of it, probabilistic sampling doesn't apply so much. Rather, here we use the non-probabilistic ones, for example, purposive, which is basically driven by a theme, convenience, which is basically where I know how far I can reach with maybe the resources I have and things like that. And snowballing, which is really commonly used, where once I've met one individual, they can help me get the next person. And one of the methods of collecting data, rather than just having one by one only, there is the use of focus group discussions, and of course, key informant, which is common all over, and I think we'll come back to those ones. Now, a bigger difference also with quantitative is that in qualitative, the sample size is not necessarily predefined. For example, when they're collecting data from one person to another, and then they find that there is no new information being generated, then they can say, we can call it quits. We've reached what they call an information saturation point. So it is not surprising that for qualitative data, the sample size might be very small, but of course the process in itself is usually expensive. Now, as you can see, because you can be, like, for example, in purposive sampling, you might want important information from people who know the process. And so already it limits people on who you can go to. That is one big drawback of it from my perspective. Now, there are around 6 methods which are commonly used to collect the qualitative data, and you can see them on screen. We have the one-on-one interviews, we have observations, we have focus groups, longitudinal studies, record keeping, and case studies. One-on-one and observation, longitudinal, they are usually very common also with the quantitative. Now, one-on-one is simply where you sit down with an individual, and with that individual, you ask the questions and they respond, or you can let the person just discuss without you interfering. Focus groups, you bring people who have a similar trait. That's why it's called focus. And it's usually a group of people. And it can be 6 to 10, depending on, of course, what resources you have and the limitations that you might have. Another method is the record keeping. This is where you just go for secondary data and you get in a lot of information from them, could be from reports and things like that. The observation might be even different from the quantitative one, because observations from quantitative might include measuring and things like that. But here you can take even notes, records, you can record audio, or you can record visual things. And then once you've done that, you go and you organize it. The longitudinal study is just the same like as always. This is why you have the same people who you follow up repeatedly for an extended period of time. And of course, there is this case where you might want to really study a particular individual or a unit to get really in-depth information through a case study. Now, so the question will be, as you're contemplating the method that you want to use for data collection, you'll ask yourself, why do I want to choose this method? One thing would be, do I want to get new information? That is, do I want to have new ground theory? And in such a case, it will help me like decide, should I use a focus group or should I go for a case study? And in fact, another method might be, I want to really focus on one individual and understand that person fully and put a complete case study out of that individual. The individual might be a person, might be a community, might be an institution. And in such a case, the method is like, the reason I want to do this method is I want to create a case study out of my work. And of course, if I have some phenomenon I want to really explore from individuals, then there is the idea of having phenomenology. I have to struggle with those terms. They're a little bit more into the social science, not my language so much. And of course, when I'm actually looking a lot more at people's shared patterns of behavior and beliefs, then I can, that one is the ethnography. And usually for this case, you want to really understand people and you want to really stay with them for a while. Now, when you're going to collect data, somebody needs to really think clearly, how do I phrase these questions? And rather, what are the type of questions that you want to use? The questions could be hypothetical, which are really based on suppositions, not facts. For example, if you get the chance to be an HIV scientist, do you think you can discover the vaccine for HIV? You really don't know. It is supposing. The questions could be provocative, which is meant to really challenge the respondent. Like I have heard people saying most evaluations are subjective. What do you think? The questions could be ideal, which simply implies that that response might not be able to really work in the current situation. The questions could be interpretative. And in such a case, it's where you also want to base the response to evidence from a text. Another method which is usually discouraged in quantitative is using leading questions, which you can use also in qualitative, because you are already trying to lead them to an already predetermined answer. And then there are loading questions, which are a little bit complex and might contain a controversial assumption. Like the example they have used is, do you watch culturally degrading TV shows on condom use? All these illustrations, I've used them from the training by Paris Musiti. I need to mention that. And of course, there could be the questions which the person can have more than one response and none of them is really wrong, which we call the multiple response questions. In addition, as you're wanting to phrase a question, you might want to consider the respondents to understand them. What experience do they have? Do I just want their opinion, or do I want to get really what they've gone through? How will it affect their feelings? Is this a sensitive question? Am I looking for people who are more knowledgeable about the area I want to ask? And also, maybe I want to ask them because of an input I need them to give, like the input could be that they played a role in a certain situation, and hence probably they can add a lot more value to the kind of questioning I want. Now, once you have the data, then there is the analysis. I will start by transcription. It is important because most of the data, when it's collected, though I haven't mentioned it, in the current dispensation of COVID, people will actually record like through Zoom, and then somebody will be tasked to type. Now, when we talk of transcription or to transcribe, it's important that the person who's putting it from audio to text, they do word by word, as spoken by the respondent, not the way they interpret it. Further, people, as the people who are doing the transcription, need to have some skill set on how to interpret punctuation properly, because you're taking it from maybe audio or visual to text. And of course, it's important that the person to also include the emotions during the interview. Did the person laugh? Did the person cry? Did the person really have a long thought about it? And once you have this data in a text format, you can continue to do the analysis. Now, As you're doing the analysis, you should always ask yourself several questions. And I found these questions from the evaluation toolkit link I've given below. For example, what are the common themes that are emerging around specific items? Are there any deviations from these patterns? Are there stories that are interesting that are coming up? And are there things that are emerging which suggests that we need to go and look for more data? And finally, do the patterns that emerge support findings of other corresponding qualitative analyses that are in the literature? And in the analysis process, there are basically two main categorizations. The first one is deductive, the second one is inductive. In the deductive is where you as a researcher have a predetermined structure. And in most cases, in this method, the data collection process just a minute. So in the deductive approach, the data collector already has a structure in his mind, and probably he might have used questions that guide and help put the themes. In the inductive approach, it's almost like a freestyle approach where you post the question and you let the person share their whole heart out. And now you have to really start digging in to find different methods, different themes that might have been there. So, irrespective of the method, there are some few steps which I got again from Question Pro, which I thought were very nice. For example, first, you need to learn how to organize your data, including to transcribe it. And as you're transcribing it, you might want to see if there are some themes that are emerging. Once you have that, you can now order them depending on your objectives or depending on the questions you ask or on the very obvious themes. Sometimes you can get that there are actually categories that are coming out strongly. Such categories, you can be able to put them and even code them and analyze them using quantitative methods. And then there is the issue about validation. This is qualitative analysis. Of course, validation might even include really looking up a bit of literature and seeing whether this one is going in line with the literature, going in a very new area, or there must be some methods of how you can say this data is actually giving a true picture also of what is happening. And then finally, you want to do your analysis where you just, you want to present the data. And once you've presented the data, you also want to redo a report. Important on the report is you need to mention these are the methods that I've used. And these are the positives, the negatives, the limitations. And these are some of the suggestions from my research, which I can propose for future work. As you're also analyzing, remember there are different types of analysis. There can be thematic, of course, from themes. Okay, it could be content analysis, where we are trying to get those, where we make replicable and valid inferences by interpreting and coding text material, where we can do constant comparison method, where we want to compare everything with some literature. It could be discourse analysis, where we are trying to find, they say the devil's in the details. You want to really understand what the what the language goes beyond the sentence that has been done. I think a lot of the emotions also help in the discourse analysis. You can make it to be more critical. And also you can finally also put that if there were specific narratives in stories that were used, you also add them in the analysis. So these are my final thoughts, which while I was preparing for this, it was clear that the quantitative data analysis, once you start it, it's a process which you should be learning from continuously and literally changing as it continues and adapting rather. And then there is something called data reduction. You might have a lot of data, but not all of it is meaningful. So it is important to you as a researcher to really focus on what you really want. If there are some emerging codes, you might want to pick them out because then you can apply even some numerical analysis on them. One common quantitative method I know of is where people use word clouds. And for that, I'm going to mention several software which can do also that. I've also come across multiple reports where they have just used qualitative data analysis, but I do believe that having a good mixture of both quantitative and qualitative is an added advantage. My final slide is, I want to tell you that apart from just going through word by word, there are also some software which can be used to help with qualitative data analysis. I have used R and NVivo. I've seen somebody use Python, and I think there are a lot more, but those are the three I could easily mention. And I want to thank you for your time. I really hope you've learned something. We have around 7 minutes. I'm happy to get your feedback through the chat or through comments. If you want to speak, kindly just unmute. Thank you. Thank you, Esther. Okay, so let me get some feedback from here. So there was a first feedback that said thank you. Okay, so far it's been feedback. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. There is Esther, there is Danilo, there is Felix, Kevinson, Defa, all of you welcome and thank you. Paul, Ben, so far it's been positive feedback. I'm really happy. I'm really hoping also Joyce is there. She can say something if she wants to add something. Thank you, Josephine.
Thank you, Thomas. I was just typing my feedback on the chat. Thank you for highlighting this area of data analysis that we don't go through quite a bit. However, I wish the next time you'd give us examples so that we get a feel of what it's all about.
Noted. So thank you for that feedback. So next time, probably we'll reschedule it again sometime later. Thank you, Anastasia. Thank you, Brett. Yeah. Oh, I like this. Gioshe, let me post it. I don't think it will show in the video unless I paste it here. This is feedback that I love the part that not all data are meaningful, and deducting the whole data set to a meaningful set, which is easier to work on, is basically what we've been doing with my team. I'm really happy to hear some feedback that where people are actually using. So thank you, Dixon. Great insights and about qualitative analysis. I'm happy to hear that. Thank you so much. So we still have 3 minutes. While people are typing, I think it's a high time I mention a few things. The first thing I'll want to mention is This presentations is courtesy of MULISA, which is Maseno University Laboratory for Interdisciplinary Statistical Analysis, and SASMU, which is the Society of Applied Statistics, Maseno University. Some of you have gone through them, so I'm really happy that you're here. MULISA is part of a bigger body, which is LISA, that is Laboratory for Interdisciplinary Statistical Analysis. And our three-pronged objective just is on training, collaborating, and consulting. And we are happy to have you here. This is part of our training, which we sat down and came up with, where we want to be sharing about our experiences and also telling people about areas of where they can apply themselves and to be equipped so that they are ready when they leave. So I'm really happy to be getting more and more people coming in. And actually one person I need to give a shout out to is my own brother. He's on the chat, it's called Gole Arthur. And let me read his comment. Thanks, Tom. One big challenge on qualitative is presentation of the data, especially for publication purposes. This is an area with endless learning. So thank you so much, Arthur, and thanks for being here.
Thanks, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So we have a minute. So for that one last minute, I'm going to share one last thing from SASMU. I want to mention that we're going to have a boot camp this coming week. And feel free to tell your friends if there are students in Maseno or nearby. We'll be having a statistics boot camp where some of the people who are actually present will feature and train people on several skills and also share the experience so that students can be able to be empowered and really know what is expected of them when they live here. So we have less than a minute. Thank you, everyone.